be linked. I mean, in Teams, you can find a link to it in the Teams chat, but I'll actually put a link to it right on my website as well, so that you guys will have a recording of this example and where I'm going with it for the future. Okay, everybody. So today, what I want to look at is I want to put a check mark beside this concept. How do arrays connect with methods? And I'll just give you the answer right now. They connect perfectly with methods. So everything that we could do with a method with a variable, we can do with an array. What does that mean? Well, it means if we think back to what methods were. So I guess I can draw it down here, okay? I just need a pen. All right, there, I got a pen now. This is a little different than drawing on the smartboard in class with you guys, but I'm just going to draw with my mouse here. If you think about a method, I'll just call this method M, okay? You think, what could we do with a method? Well, we could put things into a method, right? We could put stuff into a method, and we called those parameter or parameters. And in the last unit, we could put any kind of variable we wanted in there. But can we put an array into a method? Absolutely. Absolutely, you can use an array as a parameter. But wait a minute, there's other things methods can do. Methods can send things out. In other words, they can return stuff. Could a method return an array? Absolutely. Okay. So methods can return arrays just like they can return a regular variable. Okay. A method can return an array. Can an array be a parameter? Absolutely. An array can be one of many parameters, or it can be the only parameter. And we're going to use that in our example today. That array can be an input to a method and an output, or both. So it's going to work with methods the same way it worked with other variables. So we're not going to see a heck of a difference there. It's going to be an easy transition to do this. All right, so let's get started with that. So I'm going to enter in a comment to start. Sluggish computer. Arrays can easily work with methods. The arrays can be sent into method. In other words, as a parameter. Okay, as one of or the only parameter. Okay, saying one of multiple parameters. The only parameter, so it could be an input, and arrays can be outputted. In other words, returned from a method. So they can be inputs and outputs. So in other words, arrays can be inputs or output. So we shouldn't really see a big difference here in the way we've already learned about methods as it applies to arrays. So for example, let's make a method called output, and let's give it one of our arrays, numbers. Okay. So I'm going to send an array to the method as a parameter. So we're saying, hey, this method will output an entire array. We actually already have a method called output. If you remember, I'm going to open up our navigator. We actually have two methods called output. This method and this method are both called output. You might remember from the methods unit, that's called overloading. Two methods with the same name, but different parameters. So in other words, when we create this method output, we're going to be overloading the method for a third time. So when you click the light bulb to do this, make sure you select the option to create a method, not the ones that change one of our existing methods. We're creating a new method called output, a brand new one. Okay. All right, let's hold down Control, jump to this new method where we're going to output an array. Okay. I'm going to write our comment for this first. Actually, hang on. Before I write the comment, I'm going to change the name of this parameter from numbers to just the word array. I'm going to output an array. Move this down so we don't get confused by this. Of course, I expect you to do this with your example, but all right, so what is this method going to do? Here's the comment. It's going to output an array of integer numbers. That's what it's going to do. This parameter is the array of integers I'll be outputting. So it's a pretty simple comment. That's what it does. Okay. But I'm going to add, it's going to output this array of integer numbers in a dialog. I'm going to put it into a dialog. I think that'll be the way I'll do it. All right, so how am I going to write this method? Well, I can see right away that arrays are absolutely a parameter option. So I'm just going to put that in as a comment. Arrays can be a parameter. Or one of the parameters. So if I had multiple parameters, arrays could be one of them. Okay. All right. So here's how we're going to do this. We're going to make a string of text array. And then at the end of this method, we will output that text. Because we already have a method. Don't jump to it. We already have this method that takes one piece of text and puts it in a dialog box. So we actually already have this done. So we're just going to use the text and then send it to another version of output. But we're going to do something in between. In between, so what we're doing here is we're going to create a string to fill up. Then we will down here output that string. Okay. In between, we're going to go through the array. Okay. So here again, we can use our for loop that we learned about yesterday. FOR tab, and then tab again. And instead of putting an actual number there, I'm going to use array.length. That way it'll automatically know how long the array is. It will automatically travel. And I'm going to use a slightly fancier word for that. Traverse. That means travel. The array. We're going to travel or traverse the array. Okay? So we created a string to fill up with values. We will later be outputting that string in a dialog. But right now, we're going to travel through the array. Okay? We're going to say text plus what's in the array at spot I. And we're going to add as well a comma. We're going to add a comma so it separates each spot in the array. And I'm going to actually add one other little thing. Up here, I'm going to add one of those square brackets up here. Bracket to my string. And I'm going to add something after the for loop as well. I'm going to say text equals text. And I'm going to put the closing bracket. So those two brackets will be on either side of all the content. Inside the array, it'll put each piece of content separated by. Okay. So what I'm doing here is I am adding to the string. I'm adding stuff to the string. Okay. What I'm doing here and ending. An ending symbol to the string. So anyways, that's it. That's the method called output. Okay. Now we are calling this method right here to output the array of numbers. So let's see it in action. I run this. And it's doing this stuff. And then we get to this. Ah, there we go. There's my array of 100 numbers with 666 in it and 333 in it. I think actually we might use different numbers depending on which class I was teaching yesterday. But all the rest of the array is just full of zeros. But it did it. It outputted the array in a message box using the code that we've already done here with this. Okay, so I'm going to just clean this up a little bit and then take a second to put it up on GitHub. Those of you that might be kind of struggling to get this sort of keyed in here, let me take a second to do that. I probably won't do that again this period. I'll probably wait till the end of the period to update GitHub, but I'm going to take a second to update it right now. Again, just to remind you guys that that is an option as you do your example. And again, since we're ahead of schedule, I don't have to really rush on this example right now. We're well ahead of schedule. Okay, no branch selected. Okay, there we go. There's the branches. Next, finish. Okay, so if you're on GitHub right now, and you don't need to download the whole example, but you're trying to do what I just put in there, you could refresh GitHub at this point. And here you would see that comment I typed in about how arrays can work with methods. Here's me calling output. And then further down would be the actual output method if you want it for your example. Okay, so now we're going back to here. We were just able to output numbers. So now why don't we try to output another one of our arrays? Okay. We have the array of numbers. Okay. What about the one called array? Array is also an array of integers. So I should be able to output array as well. Okay. So let's run that. Let's see. So here's the first output. Here's the second output. It's a much smaller array. It's the one we used way back at the beginning of the example, but there it is. Okay. So here we call the method with different. And again, this isn't really the parameter. This is it really called the argument right there. Okay. But now what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to output coins. Coins is one of our arrays, but there's a problem with coins. Coins is giving us an error right here. The reason it's giving us an error is coins is not an array of integers. See here, it says it's a no suitable method. It's saying this is a double, and I can't find one with a double. I found one with an array of integers, but not an array of doubles. So what are we going to do about that? Well, we could overload the method again. We could create a fourth method called output. And that's what we're going to do. So I want you to now create, because we're going to overload the output method again. Create another overload of this method. So click it and click create method output. So now when I jump to it, it's another method. The only difference between this one is this is an array of integers, whereas this one is an array of doubles. We're going to do something a little different with this method. We're not just going to repeat the code over again. What we're going to do here is we're going to once again call this array. We're going to once again put a comment on this. Okay. Here's what this method is going to do. It's going to convert all the doubles into integers and then output the array in a dialog. So it's going to output the array in a dialog, but actually, I guess I could have squeezed this on here. But it's going to do this by converting it. So I'm going to add a step to this. So rather than just repeat this code over again, okay, this is the array of doubles. And it's going to output it as an array of integers. So the reason I'm doing this is to show you another piece of the methods thing. What I'm going to do here is create an integer array called A. So yeah, I have an array of doubles, but I'm going to build an array of integers. Okay? And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to make a method called convert. I'm going to convert the array of doubles into an array of integers. So it will convert all these doubles into integers. And then I'll just output that array of integers. I've already done that, which means it will call this method right here. It'll go up here and call this method and take A and pass it into this thing and then do all the work that it needed to do that. But in order to do this, I'm going to need to convert it. What I'm doing here is I'm creating, okay, an int array of converted doubles. So all the doubles will be converted. And then I will now output the convert array. Okay, so the output method only has 2 lines of code in it. Convert the doubles into integers and then output them. So now I'm going to use the light bulb to create a method called convert. Now the reason why I wanted to show you this one is this is a method that returns an array of integers. So the other methods were returning nothing, but we knew in our methods unit, if I go way back to some of our methods from the methods unit, that we can have methods that return things like returning an integer. This one returns an integer, right? So we already know about methods that can return stuff, but maybe we didn't know that methods can return entire arrays. So that's one of the things I'm going to put here as a comment. Methods can return output entire arrays. They can do that. And I'm also going to write my comment for this. What does the method called convert do? It converts an array to an array integers. That's what it does. Array of doubles and array integers. A lot of repetitive commenting there, but that's what it's doing, right? Okay, so how am I going to run this conversion process? Well, I have to build an int array. It will be a new array, but how big should I make it? Now, let me zoom in a little bit. I don't know how big to make it. At the end of this method, I will return that array of integers. That's what I said I was going to return. An array of integers is what I'll be returning. And that's what I built right here. I built an array of integers, but I don't know how big to build it. Wait a minute, yes, I do. The size of this array will be the same size as this array. So all I have to do here is put array dot length. So what I'm doing is I'm going to create an empty array. Now what am I going to do? I'm going to run my for loop again. And I can either use the words array.length or even use a.length. Why? Because the array called A is now the exact same length as the original array. So they're both the same length. So now I'm going to reverse the array, travelant. Okay. So when I said I created an empty array, same size as the other one. It's the same, they're the same size. Okay. Okay, now what am I going to do? Now I'm going to go into the array at spot I, put in there what's in the array called array at spot I. However, I'm going to cast it as an integer. Casting, doing this little thing, is something we saw way back in our first unit in this class. I'll just actually show you. I'm just going to search this right there, casting. Something we did back in the intro, back when we were learning variables, where we were turning a character into an integer, or, right? Casting means it uses the round brackets with the data type to convert, for example, one number type to another number type. So casting is something we've seen before, okay? So that's what's happening here. Okay, I'm cast over the double int. So I'm doing casting the double into an int. And then at the end, I just return this finished array. It's now done. So turn the new array. So this is the end of the convert method. Converting one type to another, which is called here by output, which means I now can output coins theoretically. Let's see. So the first output would be the numbers array. The second output would be the array. And then here's the array of coins. Now think about it, a lot of those coins, like 0.25, have been cast into just the number 0. The loonie and the toonie, they make sense, but the other coins, the nickel, the dime, and the quarter, were just turned into the number 0, because now they're integers, right? All right. We're going to do one more, and then we'll be done. We're going to make an int array called randoms. And I'm back here in here, under here, int randoms. Notice it's a plural word, okay? Equals random, which we actually already have a method called random. However, that random method only returns to us one integer. It gives us one integer back. You can actually read that in the documentation, that it returns one random number. And I don't want that. I want a whole array of random numbers. So I wanted random numbers between 1 and 10. But I'm going to add a third parameter here, which will be how many random numbers I want. So I'm going to want 50 of them. I'm going to want 50 random numbers that are between 1 and 10. Now, because I have 3 parameters here, it assumes that it's not going to call that method anymore. It's going to create a different method, but since it's also going to be called random, I'm going to once again overload the random. That's the method I'll be. And once it's done, then I can just output all those randoms, which is a method we already have. And that's where we'll stop today after we finish writing this method random here, okay? All right, let's do this. Use the light bulb. Create method random. I'm going to jump to the method called random. I'm going to start by renaming the 3 parameters. This is the low number. This is the high number. And this parameter is the size of the array that I'm going to be building. That's what those 3 things represent. Okay? Let's get into the code here. I'm going to generate an array of numbers. It's going to be a new integer array. This is the size it's going to be. It's going to be that size. So the parameter size, I pass right in here as I'm building this array of integers. At the end of this method, I will return all those numbers. So now it knows that this array of integers is going to get returned from the method. But what do I need to do in between? Well, I need to fill the array. So I'm once again going to use my for loop, go to numbers.length, or in this case, I can actually just use the word size, because it's the same variable that I can use for looping now as well. All of those work. I don't have to put size. I could have put numbers.length. That would work too. So I'm just trying to reduce the amount of coding. We type size. Then what I do is I go into numbers at spot I, and I need to generate a random number for right here. Well, good news. We've already got a method called random that takes a low and a high, and it generates a random number. So we've already done the work with this in our previous unit. So now let's see if it does it. There's the first array, the second array, the third array, and here's our array of 50 random numbers between 1 and 10. Well, that's pretty cool. That is a pretty good way to generate random numbers. Okay, let me cheat a little bit, add the comment. Okay, let me cheat a little bit and add comments to this code as well. That will be creating an empty array, we'll be traversing the array, we'll be assigning a random value to each index, and then we'll be returning the completed array. There is that done, and there is that done, and that means, boys, that means the class is done. I will be updating GitHub for those of you that need this, and I'm going to do that right now. Git commit. Okay. For you guys, if you need any of that example, or you need to update your example for your home remote learning, you should in a second be able to grab that right off of GitHub. I'm now going to place a check mark beside arrays with methods, that is now the concept, leaving us just one more kind of concept here for arrays. And we are well ahead of schedule here. I've maintained my timeline. I've only taught for about 30 minutes, just a little over. So you should be able to refresh GitHub and have the other methods in there with all their comments and all the code here that we did today. It's all good. Okay. I will stay on Teams for the remainder of the time to answer questions, but I am going to stop the recording right now.